Now we see how the trucks are done, okay? So the next step in this, this equation, I guess, is the rail car itself.
By the way, you just covered up your two little screws.
Yeah, I know, I see.
Okay, as long as you know it.
There's a lot of different rail cars out there. There's box cars, hoppers, gondolas, cement hoppers, I think I might have said that already, grain cars, auto racks, you name it. There's quite a few different variations out there. I've got a few examples here on the table in front of me. One of the things I talked about earlier that I can't stress enough is that when you buy a rail car, try to find the prototype online and study how that car actually weathers in the real world. It'll help you when it comes time if you decide to weather your own rolling stock. So here's an example of a real car. I happen to find the exact same road number of this car I bought from Trains on Tracks up in Amherst. So this is the exact picture of a rail car that I bought off a hobby store shelf a couple of weeks back, and there's the car right there. It's an Atlas. It's the exact same road number. It's the exact same car.
Jeez.
Okay, so that's just what I was talking about. Now, you look at the prototype, and I can see a couple of different things here. I can see this, not a lot of rust. There's no graffiti. They have the I guess it's post 2004 yellow safety stripes on the car. The model didn't come with that. There's really not, like I said, no graffiti or anything. There's a couple of small patches. If you look right here, does that come up? Ah, nice. So you can see a little patch here. There's a patch here. There's a patch here, and there's a patch here. The yellow safety stripes. So like I said, this model is not an exact replica, although it is the same car. So what I did, let me grab it. Actually, I did bring it with me. This is that car. And I wanted to wait and pull it out when I got to this little portion. So here is that exact car. And if you look at the prototype model now, and my model, it's a lot closer than it was when I first pulled it out of the box. I've added the two patches that are underneath the road number. I've added the patch that represented what was under here was the lease of the company that actually had this this hopper that no longer had it, so they patched it. And there's also a little patch for some kind of safety placard, I think, is those diamonds or whatever they're called.
Patch, is that just painted over?
It's usually a gray primer. Some railroads use, you know, whatever's available for paint. I used a gray primer because that closely matched what was on the prototype. The car, the lettering wasn't very faded. I did a little bit of white on it just to kind of fade it down a little bit per the prototype. There's a lot of little specks of different colors on there, like in that area I represented. So this closely represents that model. And when you take a car off the shelf, you know, it helps to try to find that prototype when it comes to modeling that car. I could have taken this car and just rusted, you know, the heck out of it, and then if somebody decides to look up the car online, it doesn't really look nothing like it. I think this photograph was taken in like 2004, I think, or something like that. So that's just what I wanted to, you know, touch base on. At this point, the model kind of looks like, you know, a model, but it's a toyish looking model. It's shiny plastic straight out of the box. And I just take that to the next level. And
What is it? It's a plastic pellet car?
I think it's a grain hopper. Yeah. What are they called? The air slide.
Air slide.
Yeah.
Now, are the safety stripes, are those tape?
Nope. The safety stripes. Yes. Well, it's a reflective tape.
Right.
It's this stuff right here. I tried my hardest to find yellow. I could only find red and white. So I bought this from Harbor Freight Tools. And this will probably last me a lifetime of yellow tape. And I don't use any of the black, I just cut a strip off of the yellow. And then the same way I did the blue, I do it with this. And just cut really thin strips, and then I measure and I cut and stick those on. And the nice thing about the reflective stuff is it actually is reflective on your railroad. So it's kind of neat.
Once you stick this on, do you seal it afterwards?
I do not seal this.
Okay.
Nope, they stay on there pretty well. Yeah. So like I said, where I model the modern day stuff, I have to go with the yellow safety stripes pretty much on everything. These cars, you know, you could throw these on there if you wanted to. You don't necessarily have to. They could have been white stripes. I think most nowadays it's all yellow.
Eric,
So-
do you want to give me a close-up of that car, please?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, I see the top now, it is green. That's a quick question for you though, Eric.
Side or end? Yeah, thank you.
The yellow safety stripes, I'm used to them being vertical. Those are horizontal.
Thanks,
I
Eric.
mean, I'm used to them being horizontal, those are vertical. Is there,
I think it all depends on the railroad and for the prototype.
yeah.
So, you know, that's a mistake you could make if you didn't look up the real rail car that you're trying to model. You could put them vertically. There's nothing that says you can't do that.
That's right.
But I think in this case, going vertical for this car might have made more sense because there's a lot of writing along the seam of that car.
Find yellow tape like that,
Not reflective. I can find, you can find,
reflective.
yeah, I wanted reflective because that's what it is in the real world. You can get yellow masking tape, you can get yellow electrical tape, be the same effect, but it's not the reflective kind. And I'm going to do some night operations on my railroad. You should see it at night if the light hits it right. They really reflect. It's a cool effect. So anyway, I don't want to spend too much more time on that. You know, you want to look up the real car if you can. It doesn't have to necessarily be the exact same road number. That car, and you know, it gives you an idea of how to model that and weather it up. So we all have one of these 50-foot box cars in front of us. This in itself takes another good hour. You know, luckily, there's a couple of different ways you can look at this. Ready to roll models come out of the box with this nice shiny sheen on them, which is really the perfect paint coating for the first step of weathering that I do, which is called a wash. If you paint your own models, a lot of people do, and they decal them, you know, the models themselves. You know, that's great, but you want to make sure you seal that with either a matte or a gloss finish. That way, if you do add chalk to it, if you do a wash to it, it's not going to affect your paint coat and all the work you've done for decaling and stuff like that. Now, when you get a ready-to-run box car like this, you could run this on your layout just like this. There's nothing wrong with doing that. More modern-day stuff, you know, a lot of the cars nowadays, I think like every other car that rolls by you has graffiti on it. So these are Blair Line graffiti decals. These are water slide decals. Dip these in water, put them on your box car, and you can represent those really easy. Now you can also use, what I do is you can use gel pens to represent graffiti. These are all kinds of different gel pens that I bought. A lot of different fluorescent colors, right down to white, greens, yellows, reds, blues. And there's a program I found online that it's really kind of cool. It's called MakeYourOwnGraffiti.com. It's a free website. You can actually go in there and create your own graffiti, scale it down in black and white, print it, put it on your car, and just trace it on there, and then fill it in with paint pens. It's like so cool that I found this thing because I was like, how am I going to do this graffiti? So one of the benefits of using gel pens is that you can create your own style of graffiti and you're not going to have what everybody else has. You can have your own
Cool.
graffiti.
Like you could put on there PSMRC.
And I do have that on one of my well cars at home. I've already tagged it with a PSMRC website. So,
Put Newingham was here.
but that's what's cool about doing your own graffiti is you're not going to have the same graffiti that everybody else has that you bought off the shelf. You can be creative and just do your own thing, you know, and write whatever you want on there.
Now, do you put that on and seal those decals before you put it on anything else?
Yes.
Weathering or any of that stuff?
A good rule of thumb to keep in mind is every single layer you put on your car, you should seal it before you put the next layer on.
I see. So what you would do with that is this car the way it is, you put, you know, the decals on that you want, then seal it, then you put all your weathering layers over it.
Correct. And you want to seal it with either a matte or a gloss. You don't want to use a flat yet. Flat is your final sealer.
Okay.
That just gives the shine and everything.
And as far as your decals go, you don't put layers on and then put your decals on and then put layers over?
Well, see, that's a tricky question there, because you can take your decal, put it on now, and it's going to fade with what you're doing.
Right.
Or you can put the decal on last, and it'll be a fresh tag. It all depends on the effect you're looking for.
So you can do that.
Absolutely. You can put it on now, or you can put it on last before the final
So
dull
a rail
coat.
car, it can spend 8 years out on the track before it's...
I've taken
So-
and put a decal on at this stage, and then put a decal over half of that decal newer at the last stage. Like somebody came along and painted over the other guy's decal. You see that a lot in the real world. So it's all depends on your creativity and what you want to do with these decals. You can either paint them on yourself. Gel pens work good. Some people say they don't. I find they do. So you can use acrylic paints and a really fine brush. And I can't stress enough, you can copy the exact same rail car. If this thing had a tag on it, and I can blow that up, and I can take that exact rail car and set it down and try to duplicate that tag, if you want to take it to that extent, you know, that's a great thing that we can
That
do.
car that you did, but how did you put those tags on? With a
These?
pen?
Nope, that was just done. I masked it off with some blue painter's tape, and then I just painted some primer on there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, pretty much what the railroad does. They just mask it off. It doesn't even have to be perfect. You could
Yeah.
even just hand paint it on there, you know.
Sometimes that's exactly what they're
Yeah,
doing.
yeah, they're just out in the field and they just cover these things up. I could have, you know, it could have easily had a big gray patch over this whole section that they just covered up somebody's vulgar graffiti that we see on there sometimes, you know, so. But it's part of the railroad industry. You're not going to see rail cars nowadays going by you without any graffiti on them. So I represent that either with gel pens or, you know, the Blair line decals. There's all kinds of different kinds of water slides. So, ready to roll model, 50 foot box car, straight out of the box. We've done the trucks. I usually make that my first step. The next step that I usually do is I will take railroad tie brown through my airbrush and I'll spray the whole underside of this car. Okay, and I'm going to do that right now. You have an airbrush if you want. I can give you my air feed after. If
Go ahead. You go for it. I'll
okay,
let you go.
you want
It
to
just slows
you want
it
to
down.
just cut it for now, and I'm going to set this all up, and then we can. The next thing I want to talk about now is the underside of your ready to roll 50 foot box car. We're not ready to start on the tops or the sides yet or the ends. I usually start on the bottoms. This is a Milwaukee Road caboose that I did. You can see, you know, we got the trucks done on this one. You can't really see the underside of this very well, but if we do flip the car onto its side, I took the time and actually detailed all the details from the manufacturer that they spent a lot of time on under here. Even though this thing rides face down and most people won't see it, I know it's there, and you know, if you ever want to show it off, you can pick it up and show your friends. But this is done with railroad tie brown. I use some different variations of chalk colors like we learned on the wheels. And then all these highlights in here with all the chains and the braking gear and stuff like that was just highlighted with the white paint like I just showed you. And that's the final step, and it really makes all those details pop out really nice. So that's what I'm going to show you right now. So the bottom of this box car, here's a gondola that I did. You can just do a railroad tie brown and call it good. And that's what I did here. And that just represents your underside of whatever you're modeling. Just by doing that and the car sits on its side, it kind of represents that dirty, grungy look underneath. You could take the time and dry brush the sides of this if you wanted to kind of highlight those details, add some rust streaks down the sides of that. But just for a basic undercoating, just railroad tie brown. This gondola right here, I took the time and did some rust on the bottom of that, and then did some dry brushing. The same technique was used on this caboose, and that really kind of helps the details pop out on that one as well. Here's a 50 foot box car that's just the same as what we're about ready to show you, and that one was done with just a base coat of railroad tie brown. Just to represent the dirt. We don't want the shiny black plastic under there, you know. So just every now and then we'll be doing something and we're going to tip that car over. Hey, look, it's done, you know. So
But most of the cars like this one, there's not a lot of detail underneath.
no, these are
anything.
some older cars, you know. For the most part, all you see on this box car is the brake cylinder, I think is what that is, and some other of the braking gear under there that we could just dry brush and highlight with a little bit of rust, because that's really all you see. But for the first part of this step, you want to give this some tooth So I usually give it a primer coat, kind of what I call it, of railroad tie brown. You can use any color you want. You know, there's a flat earth color you could use if you wanted to do that. There's a dark flat brown you could use. It all depends on the region, I think, that you're trying to model. For me, you know, the rusty, dirty, oily look is what I look for. So without further ado here, we're going to take a little bit I've already mixed up some railroad tie brown with some alcohol, diluted it to 2% milk. And I put a glove on just because I don't want to get all the overspray on me. And once I start working on these box cars, it really helps to keep your oils off your hands and stuff, you know, from getting on your work. So all we're going to do is we're going to just take and we're going to go ahead and spray this with some railroad tie brown. Normally when I'm at home, I'll be using a paint booth for this. But you can already... Alright, so here's the bottom of the 50-foot boxcar that we all just took the time to spray. This is just straight railroad tie brown. Just a unevenish coat along the bottom. It doesn't have to be even. You know, runs in it, that's fine. Along the sides of the car, just along the bottom as well. And when I spray this, I just suggested to the guys too, if you're using an open color cup like this one, I usually move what I'm spraying versus moving the airbrush back and forth, because you'll have the tendency to get some paint on you like John did over there. So, you know, just to make things easier, I kind of move what I'm working on versus moving the airbrush back and forth and splashing the paint everywhere. And then when I get up along the sides of the car, I spray up the way the mud and grime would actually get up on the car. You wouldn't want to spray down this way. The mud and stuff comes up from the bottom off the trucks, and that's what kind of we represent there. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up. The next step of this is going to be the fading to the paint process. We got these nice shiny cars that come out of the well, I'm going to back up. Before we fade, we're going to do a wash. Okay, these cars come out of the box with a nice sheen already on them, a nice matte finish, kind of glossy finish, and that's actually the perfect finish for doing a black wash on these. And what that black wash is going to do is just kind of highlight all the rivets and details and the ribs of this car, and then from there we're going to do some fading to it, and then after that we'll add some rust and take it from there. So what I use for a wash on the sides of these, you can either use calligraphy ink, and rubbing alcohol works really well. You can use some grimy black polyscale paint, and alcohol works really well. You can mix up some of the cream coat black and water, because this doesn't mix very well with alcohol, and use that as a wash. The whole idea behind the wash is you want it to be very transparent. And the reason why you want to do it when the model still has a nice sheen to it is because it wicks into all the little corners and pools in all these little corners, and really helps give that model the shadowy depth that we're looking for.
I'm sorry.
What's John?
What's the color of that paint right there?
This one's just a grimy black.
Okay.
There's engine black and there's grimy black, and if you notice, the engine black is a more dark black than a grimy black. The grimy black kind of has some gray in it.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't use straight black. It doesn't really represent shadows well. In the real world, they're not really black. They're more of like a grimy, gray black. That's kind of what I use. So we'll take some of this grimy black, mix, not shake.
You and 007.
Yep. And my formula for mixing this up is like 10 to 1. So let me get a fresh one with it's got the lines on it. If I just take this and fill it up all the way to there with rubbing alcohol, I'm only going to take, I'm not even going to squeeze this. I'm going to dip it into the paint, and about that much, and just mix that in.
Is that right?
That's it. What you want to think of this as is more of a I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. There's a
Wash
specific.
coat?
It's a wash, but it's you don't want like the consistency of motor oil. It's way too thick. It has to be. There's a word I'm looking for I can't think of right now. It's very transparent.
Like washing somebody with a dirty wash pan.
It'll come to me.
Just kind of,
I'm just gonna get another little drop on here because that was just a little thin. So this is about 2 drops versus almost 3/4 of one of these full of rubbing alcohol. And I use the rubbing alcohol, first of all, it evaporates quicker than water. It's gonna leave behind what I'm looking for.
How many
in the
units
wash.
did you use
Huh?
on the,
a squeeze. Use the squeeze, John.
Yeah, there's no, just 10 to 1. 10 drops of alcohol, 1 drop of paint, 20 drops of alcohol, 2 drops of paint. It's about, what I got here. So you want something like this, just a very thin, doesn't stick to anything. And you're gonna want a nice wide, soft brush. Kind of like this. And I'll pass this around, you guys can all try this. You just take this. You could even use a bigger brush if you wanted to. Some people recommend a nice wide brush, which is nothing wrong with doing that. And all you're gonna do here is wash the car. You don't want to stop halfway in between when you're doing a wash. You want to take and wash that entire car. So what we're gonna do is just kind of put this on this car. And you can see how it starts to pool. I just kind of let it run down the car like it would in the real world.
can you airbrush that?
Not a wash.
Okay.
No. All this really does is just kind of highlights those shadows. Now, there's a trick that I learned for this, and this is nice and wet. See this hairdryer sitting here? Put this on a low warm heat, and you can take and dry that. And it kind of helps blow those puddles away. See what's happening as that's drying? You see what's happening? You don't want to use a high heat because you're going to warp your car. So I just use the warm low setting. Ask me how I know.
Yeah, no heat guns either.
Yeah, no heat guns. So you
End up with a handful of molten plastic.
You can kind of see what happens there. It's still a little bit wet, but it's already started to make that car look a little more faded, kind of highlights the shadows.
Okay, let's do it.
And if you use black, it would just be more of a darker color than that. So use my brush, and we're just going to do the other side real quick. Just kind of run it along the car. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just, you know, this grimy, grungy wash that we're putting on here.
You put it over the entire car, right?
Yeah, this brush is kind of small. I should have probably used a bigger brush, but it's okay.
As you say, you're not doing delicate work, so.
Yeah, this isn't the fine detail. This is just the grungy detail. So you can actually watch as that thing dries. It just kind of changes the effect from what you guys have. At this point, you want to be careful because it's going to wear that right off of there. If you touch it.
Or actually the glove will take it off too though.
So you do the, yeah, you want to be careful at this point. I just hold from the top because we haven't done anything to the top yet. So when you start working on the sides, you don't want to grab it from that because it's gonna want to almost wear right off there. It's a little bit stuck, but you don't want fingerprints in there either. It's going to stand out. So you can do the same thing with the ends of your cars. Just kind of throw some into these, especially down along the bottom here where all these indents are. Just like that. Want to try it?
Yep.
There should be enough in there to do the two cars. And if you pass it to me, I can probably dry it off for you. And you can see there how the paint's really pooling. It pools down along the bottom of the door.
Just a second.
And it's obviously, it's shiny, so you know it's still wet. You just want to kind of keep working with your hair dryer, dry it off the best you can. See, it's looking better already.
Throw me your brush.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm
Oh,
thrifty
you want a
here.
brush?
Yeah, you can both do it at the same time, that's fine.
You know what I like about this is you don't have to be careful.
Nope.
Just slob it on there, baby.
Yep.
Here you go, Eric.
Ready to dry it off?
Yep. Now, I didn't do the top of it.
Nope.
That's beautiful.
Fade to it. You know, it really.
Oh,
Now, is there a different procedure that you use for the roof?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
You need some more wash? You good? Good?
I think I got it. I use
It doesn't have to be
every
perfect.
last drop.
Yeah, I'm supposed to drink it.
Now, another thing to keep in mind when you do this, and this is actually a good example. When you do a wash, you want to brush stroke this way. Is a good, because if you look at what happens, see when I dried it, your brush strokes on there go side vertical instead of horizontal. See that?
Oh, yeah, okay, I got you.
Yeah. So the whole idea behind a wash, if you look on this one, there's no brush strokes there. What you do is you hold the car upright and you get load up your brush and you just wash it across the top and it runs down. And that's the effect you're looking for. If you start brushing this way, when you dry it, you're going to get those brush strokes. I'd rather see brush strokes, you know, this way versus
So what,
vertical.
can you repair that at this point in time?
Yeah, you could put some more wash on it, but we're going to end up putting so much more stuff on here, I might not notice it, you know. But that's, you know, that's a good example. This side's fine, but you can see the brush strokes on the other side.
Yeah,
But, you know,
I'm
it's
trying
not-
to make it go as far as I could get it to.
I know you were running low.
I was running out of strokes, literally.
All right, so that really fades us up nice. Okay, at this step, you could take some of your acrylic clear and seal it at this point. I'd recommend doing that. We're going to skip that step and go to the next one, because what I'm going to use is some reefer white and actually fade this paint job, and that's going to actually seal what we just did anyway.
Now, you would put that, that clear acrylic, you just brush it on?
No, you spray it through an airbrush. Yeah. Yep, so if you want to stop there, George, I'll mix up some white paint, and then
Repeat that, please.
when I mix up the white paint that I use to fade the paint on the piece of rolling stock that I'm working on, I mix it thinner than I would normally. Like when we painted the railroad tie brown on the bottoms of these cars, I mixed like a 2-to-1. This one here, I'll go 3-to-1, almost 4-to-1, because I want a really transparent, and I only want to represent a faded paint, not a paint job. And the other thing that, you know, I've learned, some people don't use white. Some people will try to use a color that represents the car that they already have. So if you had a red paint, you could mix that up and add some white paint to it. So let's say you took 2 drops of red paint, 1 drop of white paint, and then add your rubbing alcohol just for a different color. It's tricky with red because when you start thinning red paint with white paint, it turns pink, and you don't really want that. So.
Red actually, when it ages, turns orange.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if you follow regular paint being, well, you ought to know, Paul.
It turns orange.
Okay.
He likes new pink.
So the wash that we did kind of faded this car already, so we're not going to really need to do a lot of the white. On a dark car like this one here, this was done with the same kind of white paint, but it's very transparent. And if we go back to the original slide of this, well, is that one? This is the original paint job on this car. And then this is what it comes out looking like. So you can see fresh out of the box is really a sharp colored paint job versus what it looks like now. And that's what the white paint does. It just fades that paint job. And it looks more, you know, what it looks like in the real world. And I use mostly white to fade all of my rolling stock. I don't really go too many different colors. Like I said, some people use the more close color, like you'd want to use a green paint here, faded with some white. This one would be a brown with some white, black with some white, you know, it all depends. It's practice, practice, practice kind of thing. So we're going to go ahead and fade this one down a little bit more, and especially along the roof, because we really haven't added a lot to the roof of this car yet. So I'm going to fade it down a little bit, and then I'm going to show you how I do the rust on the top of these.
You know, one thing, it takes the blue dots off the bottom of your car.
Well, you can add those back on after. You can add those back on after.
No, that could, you turn into 2 silver dots.
Yeah.
That's your,
Okay, so we just take a little bit of the white paint.
figured that would, took me a long time to figure that one out,
No. What was your first quote?
It actually looks like 2% milk, huh? Once again, I just kind of hold the car. And when you're doing a white and you're fading your paint job, you do not want to get in close. You want to stay to the point where the paint's going to be almost dry when it hits your rolling stock. Okay, so we'll get some paint flowing through there, and all we're going to do is just lightly coat this car. And it's not going to really show up until it dries, and then you see it's already faded, and that's all you want to do. And that actually seals what we just did. So if I flip this over the other way, and then same thing on the top. The ends.
Now, you aren't moving the car.
I'm not. I've progressed past that. For people that just start out with an open color cup, I would suggest moving the car.
Especially ones that dribble.
Yeah. So the biggest thing that I learned, John, when I first started doing this was an open color cup, is I moved the airbrush too fast, and what happened to you, it splashes out. You'll get it, and you won't have to move the car. You know, you can do this,
Like a novice.
but it's all just a practice. Now, if you want to take and do the rails along the bottom, just kind of highlight that, you can do that also. And then, you know, that's what we finish it with. And what we've done is taken that monotone, all one color red car at this point and turned it into a more realistic looking.
colored beat up car.
Yeah,
Now, did you put any of that on the roof?
Yes.
I did. I had to give you a little more paint. You want to cut while we do?
Actually, I'm not sure.
So it's a very subtle effect when you use the white, but it is an effect nonetheless. It really helps just kind of blend that wash that we just did, so we don't have any really sharp edges. Just want to keep in mind when you do the white wash, sorry, the white fading effect, you want to keep the model far enough away that the paint is almost dry when it hits the model. You want a very transparent, just fade it down. At this point too, if you wanted to fade any of the lettering down, you could do that and then seal the model. Just keep in mind, like I said, we're skipping a step here and sealing the model. Just, you know, just kind of speed things up. But every time you do something, you'd probably want to seal it
Seal it with
before the next step.
what? With the acrylic, the
Yeah.
clear acrylic stuff.
Yeah.
And there's this little thing.
People use dull coat, but like I said, I've had mixed results with dull coat. It just kind of takes away everything that I've
Use
done.
that, you know, with no,
This,
you
I thin it.
thin it.
Yeah, but I thin this 2 to 1.
That's thinned already then.
This is not thinned yet. No, this stuff is actually pretty thick compared to regular, you know. But I would thin this just like I would paint, maybe a little bit thinner. You just want something to coat the model. You don't want to wash off what
You
you've
spray
done.
it on too, right?
Spray it through my airbrush. Yeah,
I noticed that you say that's Model Master
yeah,
as opposed to Polyscale.
yeah.
Polyscale has a,
They must have their own brand. I just happened to pick this one up. It was
okay,
what was
so
available.
it's not a, it could be an accidental choice.
Now,
But it's gotta be acrylic.
yes, and that, you know, this stuff here, if you don't want to use an airbrush, which I'm glad I remembered this is a clear acrylic matte coating. I got this from Hobby Lobby. And so if you want to not use this and take the time to put your whole airbrush together, you can cheat and use this stuff. This will work just as well as your airbrush. And it's quick, painless, and
Does
it's
it take long to dry?
It's acrylic, so no, it actually dries pretty quick. So I'll seal this one just to kind of show you what this will do. I'm gonna go over there to do it though, because this stuff's kind of, you know, it's kind of strong, just like any other spray paint.
The booth is not,
No, I'm gonna go over by the door. Go over by the door just to kind of give it a shot. I'll just do one side so you guys can.
Using your wife's
So
spray,
I use,
torch, right?
yeah, I use the more non-volatile stuff, and I just take the time and put it, you know, mix this up and spray it through my airbrush, and it's, you know, it doesn't smell half as bad either. So, you know, in a pinch, like I said, you can use this. I've used it, you know, so it's possible. And you know, we got kind of a speckled effect on that one, unfortunately. I didn't mix it up enough. I didn't take the 2 minutes to mix up the rattle can. We're gonna end up hiding that anyway. What do you got there, the Krylon stuff?
Yep.
Yeah.
hang on, I'm
So the sides are done with the railroad tie brown. We've done a little bit of a wash on there just to kind of highlight the darker areas, and we've sealed it, okay? The next thing that we can work on is going to be the roof. Now there's a couple ways you can do the roof. One of the easiest ways I find to do it is with acrylic paint. If I can get to the slide. Right there. So this Burlington Northern boxcar right here was done the way I'm about ready to show you with acrylic paint. You can use oil paint. And that's the effect that we get. Okay, so it's easily done, you guys. I gave you some Q-tips. There's 2 coats that I use. Is the burnt umber that represents the older rust, and the raw Senia represents the newer rust. So if you got a clean little color palette, I'll give you guys a little bit of this paint. Give me a squirt of that. And maybe I'll give you a little more.
You can use the chalks.
We're going to use that after to blend, because this leaves some sharper edges, and what we use the chalk for after is just kind of blend that.
Okay.
Now, one of the things you got to keep in mind is you want to think about before you start this is how heavy of a rusty roof do you want. It all depends on how long the car's been in service, what the prototype photo looks like, and your own preference of how much you want on there. This one was done pretty heavily. You can either do it this way, you can do it very lightly with this. There's a couple of different application ways to do this. These are little sponge applicators. These work well if you just want to rust up the very tops of these roof lines, or you can use Q-tips and stuff like that. So what we'll start out with is a Q-tip. It's really easy the way to do this. When you take, I always forget to give myself some, huh? We start out with the darker color.
Use a regular Q-tip.
Q-tip, yep.
Okay.
Regular Q-tip. And all we're going to do is take some of that burnt umber on your Q-tip, and right along the middle of the roof line, same idea on here, same idea in the picture, is you just kind of work that, dabbing it on there. Now you want to keep in mind that rust is going to probably gather along the roof line edges on the car and down the center. There's no right or wrong way to put the rust on there. When I do it, I kind of spread it out from the center line outward. And like, for example, on some of these cars that have these aluminum roofs, you could mask off one of these aluminum panels. One of them might have gotten rusted so bad in the real world they've actually replaced it with a brand new panel. So you could mask one of these off and not even touch it with any rust, and then when you're done, peel that tape away and you'll have a brand new panel there. I have a couple of those on my railroad at home. So this darker burnt umber color is actually just representing the older style rust. Just along the roof line, it's going to be along the edges. And a little bit of paint kind of goes a long way. One of the things I find too on these 50-foot box cars is this little seam in here. You want to get your Q-tip and you kind of want to rub some paint in there. Otherwise you'll have a nice nice straight line of unrusted paint. Mel, see this roof line right here?
Yeah.
You want to make sure you get a little bit in there. Same with you, John, up inside the roof line right here. I finished the model one time and never got any rust in there, and it just stood out.
Jump right up at you.
Yeah. Now, I gave you guys a couple of different applicators. If you want to try using one of these bigger tipped or pointed ones instead of a Q-tip, there's different kinds you can use.
Now, when you dip the Q-tips in the paint, you know, do you dab it, you know, before you put it on the model? Because I found that I was
You get a
doing,
big blotch if you're not careful, right?
yeah.
No, I just work it on there. I mean, once I get some paint like this, John,
Yeah.
I'll put a puddle right there, and that's my puddle I work with.
Oh, okay.
And I just work it in from there. Now, while that acrylic, just before it dries, if you want to take the flat end of this spongy applicator, you can kind of do that, and it just gives it a more uneven look. And it picks up some of that excess. And yeah, you're kind of rubbing it on there. I just kind of dab mine on. It's gonna be some rusty Able cars.
Yeah, take them up to next Springfield next year and say, you know what happened to your old cars? Look at them, they age.
Well, this is the new Able car, the one that we got this year that I weathered up. This is a 2013 car. It's seen some better days. It's been in service for a while. This one was weathered up with oil paints.
Now, what's the real big difference though in the...
The drying time and the texture. I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to get into showing you both. I might be able to to do a quick little demonstration of some oil paint on the side of this boxcar. So, just one of the biggest things, and I kind of breaking my own rules here, is we're handling the cars a lot. When we're working on the roofs and stuff like that, I kind of leave it.
Well, that was my
Sitting.
next question. Do you try to work so you do the same job on like 3 or 4 different cars or something like that?
I usually work on one car at a time.
Oh, all right.
Except for coal cars, like unit cars, like your well cars, the 5-unit articulated cars, the spine cars are like that, the well cars are like that, coal cars are like that. I usually do like 5 at a time on those because I want them to all look uniform because I run them all together.
Yeah.
You don't want a big variation of cars when you're working with well cars and coal cars because they all stay in a unit train and they all kind of fade the same unless you got one brand new coal car in there.
Well, I was just wondering, about, did you say handling something?
Yeah, I just kind of set it down. Once we start working on it, you don't want to start picking it up too much. So since we're working on just the roofs and kind of the edges, I kind of set the car down and kind of work like that. I was just kind of handling the car a lot. But you want to limit your handling, and you want to handle the raised portions like the ladders, because we're going to be highlighting those.
Now, is that too light or is that?
That's perfect. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. And then, like I was showing you with these little applicator sponges, just before it dries, you can kind of soften the edges, just like that. And that's the first step of the rust process with the burnt umber.
Next sponge.
Yep, so you should have something that looks kind of like that right now. Yep, that's fine. Perfect. Now, older rust kind of forms to the outside of the rusty stain patch, whatever it is. So you can either get a new one or use the other side. And what we want to do here is take some of the lighter color. And now, John, you want to kind of get most of that off. And all you're going to do with this is you're going to go on the inside like this. See that end? And that just represents the newer rust.
Oh,
John, see that just a little bit?
Yep.
And that's what we're going to work on here.
Hang on. Can you point to it exactly, please?
Right here. Now, I usually have the applicator sponge in one hand and my Q-tip in the other because I don't let the paint dry. I kind of work it so it blends it. I don't like the sharp edges. You don't really see that a lot in the real world. So I will take and add some of this lighter color down the middle. I'm going to do it a little dark so the camera can see it. And then I'll take this and just kind of fade it in there, so that it kind of gives you softer edges, not these really rough, sharp edges. And there's no right or wrong way. You just add a few of these variations of colored.
You do the whole length of the car too at the same time?
Yeah.
Oh,
The nice thing about the applicator sponge that I find is it gives you, it does away with the rough edges, but look, Mel, see all these little dots, these little rust spots?
okay. Yeah.
Is what happens when you just touch that on there.
Yeah.
It gives you these like little tiny rust spots
Yep.
that you see in the real world a lot.
The real.
And get a little more under in there.
Very supple,
Yeah.
as they would say in New England. Supple. That's not supple, it's supple.
And this is an older 50-foot box car. So it's seen better days, but I don't like going too much, just enough to represent that rust. And here's what I got for the top.
Yep.
So you get that
I'm not even as heavy as you are.
Nope, and that's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I
Hang on.
couldn't either.
Okay.
Actually, I want some over there.
I think that was the only slide I had.
I was thinking of parked at a fertilizer plant or sulfuric acid.
Now you can use the same technique on the bottoms of the cars too. You can use chalk, you can use acrylic paint just like we did on the top if you want to highlight some of the brake cylinders or, excuse me, any of that detail under there. So once you're done with the top and you're satisfied with the way that looks, flip it on its side. And then you take that same applicator and you start with a darker color, and you got to think about now where that rust accumulates a lot. You're not going to be able to do the fine little, you know, you see in box cars a lot, these very fine rust like cuts in the car. What we want to do with this big blotchy thing is just kind of go along the door frames where you're going to see a lot of rust build up. You almost want it a little bit transparent. And don't forget to use your applicator sponge to make sure you kind of fade that in, you know, because it is older rust we're representing here. And along the door track would get pretty rusty on that, I don't know what that's called, the frame door rail. And on the tops and the rivets. And then a little bit along the ladders. Anywhere that you think, you know, you'd find rust on a real car. I'll streak some of this darker stuff right down the white lettering. If you guys want to look up here for a second, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Like the white lettering, how it really stands out.
Yeah.
Don't take a lot of paint. You can take and just kind of streak that right down on these letters and kind of fade those down.
You know, the dark, the umber.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Just kind of fade those letters down a little bit. Like that.
Yeah, don't forget to do the other side.
That's what I'm doing, John.
Oh,
Flip side then, baby. Weights are loose in this thing. Every time I shift it, I think I broke it.
And along the bottoms of the, you know, the car, down along the bottom, get some rust down there. You can see a little bit of paint goes a long way, huh? Doesn't take a lot.
Yeah, you know, everybody complains about the cost of paint.
Yeah.
do?
Well, some people do. They say, "Yeah," I'm seeing why they do. They're using too much.
Okay, I'll stop at that. Now don't forget about your ends also. You can throw a little bit of rust up on the ends, the darker stuff along the bottom. Oh, I flip-flopped. I've also gone as far as painting the little wood plate that you find on these 50-foot box cars. Gone as far as painting those a wood color. Those are, what are those, attack boards, I think they call them on these older cars.
Yeah.
You can paint
Well, it's
those up.
interesting. I got a couple of older models that they give you those little plaques. You got to glue the little boogers on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Jeez. My hand's starting to get a little sweaty. starting to stick. So you should start having something that looks kind of like this. On the tops, on the bottoms.
Yep.
Same with that one there. What do you think, Mel? Getting there?
Yep. Oh, I'm being very conservative over here. I must be hanging around George too much.
Yep.
Thanks for the compliment.
I feel complimented, don't worry. I didn't mean it as anything else but. Yeah.
I'm going to just demonstrate real quick how I would do, you know, you have the other option of these oil paints. Acrylics dry really fast, but when you get into these oil paints, I buy these at just any craft store. You know, they come in a bunch of different sizes and colors. This one here happens to be a burnt umber. This one here is a raw Senia. Burnt Senia, raw umber. These are good rust colors.
Do you use lighter rust also?
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
But again, you don't use a lot of it.
No,
Okay.
so with the oil colors, you know, it's the same idea as what you guys are doing with the acrylics. This one's the burnt Senia. This one's a really reddish color. And we have a little bit of burnt umber. And some raw Senia. I'm not gonna, go ahead, George.
Where do you choose to use oils versus acrylics?
The biggest thing with the oil color is you can streak it better. The drying time is reduced drastically compared to the acrylic paints. The acrylic paints are good for representing like I find, you know, on the tops. You can use oil paint up here too, there's nothing wrong with doing that. You could apply the oil paint the same way we're doing with acrylics, but for today's, you know, class, I figured the acrylics would be the best way to go because they're already dry. Versus oil paints, you need almost 12 to 24 hours for a true, you know, even though oil paint feels dry to the touch, it's still what they call green underneath, and it takes a long time to dry. So just to show you guys how I would do this is where the toothpicks kind of come into play. The biggest thing you want to keep in mind when you're working with oil paint is a little bit goes a long way with the oil paint. So if I'm going to represent some, you know, boxcars get dinged up and scrapes in them and all that stuff, I'll just take a little bit of this burnt umber oil paint, and what I'll do is I'm just going to just touch that on here, and that just represents a couple little scratches and dings. And then from there, all you need to do is take a flat brush, either something like this,
Fan brush?
yeah, a fan brush, or something with a little more stiff bristles I find works well as also. Something like this works pretty good. You can dip this into your odorless mineral spirits if you'd like, or you can just take it and just lightly run it down the car. Just like that, that's all it takes. And what we're doing is we're just streaking that down the car. To represent those rust spots that you see a lot of. And
That you're taking advantage of the fact that the paint doesn't set as quickly.
yeah.
Allows you to streak it.
Yeah. And when that dries, it gives you a nice rusty spot. You can take some of the lighter color, just like we do, to represent some of that newer style rust, and just kind of dab it right into the center of those darker ones. And you see I'm using toothpicks for paint brushes. You can stretch paint out quite a ways. I've got way too much on here. And now you can see that gives you another little shade in there.
I basically have a yellow.
Hang on for a second.
I'm not real, I'm one of the newer cars. I'm not,
Look just like, oh,
oh, see, now you're getting personal.
yeah, now I'm getting really,
Jesus, now you're getting my ire up.
So when you work with oil paints, you're not going to be able to handle the car like you do with acrylics.
You do it now.
It's just
No
not
way.
possible. So when you're working with oil paints, you want to give yourself a couple of days to weather a model, not just a couple of hours. You know, because this oil paint, these little streaks that I did, if I touch those right now, it's going to get ruined. I'd have to just wipe it off with some mineral spirits and start over. The only problem with doing that is I'm going to wipe off with the mineral spirits everything I've already done. So